My name is Alison Theaker, and I am just going to share a few thoughts with you about achieving an equal future for International Women's Day 2021 here at Plymouth University. So before I taught in higher education, I had 10 years in public relations practice, and I've taught for over 20 years in the States and in the UK. And I've also been running my own business since 2009. And as well as teaching at the university, where I've been an associate lecturer for the last 5 years, I'm doing a PhD, which is looking at the role of mentoring for women entrepreneurs. And some of the thoughts I'm going to share with you comes from information I found out during that project. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the myth of entrepreneurship. I'm going to talk about the Athena doctrine, and I'm going to talk about leadership in a pandemic. And how does that, what kind of do we see in those kind of terms between the difference between male and female leadership? So the myth of entrepreneurship is that you start, you have an idea, you scale it up, and then you sell it on for vast amounts of money. But actually, this is only done by a very, very tiny minority of entrepreneurs, by externally financed, non-family, profit-focused growth ventures, developed economies, normally educationally and economically privileged men with their eyes on a prize of a lucrative exit. That actually is a very small percentage of the people who are running their own business. What's the reality? Well, 99% of the private sector in the UK is an SME, a small and medium enterprise, and they provide 60% of private employment, and 75% of those are sole traders. Now, contrary to this idea of scaling up and selling on, 74% of those want to keep the business the same. The Federation of Small Business did some research in 2018 and found this out. However, only 19% of businesses in this country are owned by women. So that really doesn't stack up in terms of how can we achieve equality. In 2013, a couple of researchers actually looked at this whole idea of feminine qualities, and they asked 64,000 people across 13 countries. They gave them a list of 125 traits and asked them just to class them as male or female or neutral. And the other half of the sample were given the same traits and asked to say which ones were desirable for leadership. What they found was actually that feminine qualities were more valued for leadership, success, morality, and happiness. That would be empathy, collaboration, and communication, more highly valued than being strong, being aggressive, being decisive. They also found that corporations with women on the board outperformed all male boards, although, having said that, only 16% of Fortune 500 companies actually had women directors. And this idea of masculine leadership, success has many parents, but failure is an orphan, was contrasted with feminine leadership, where failure was part of the creative process. And that was seen as actually being able to be vulnerable and being open and actually admitting your mistakes. How does that relate to what we've seen in terms of female leadership in the pandemic? It's been kind of quoted anecdotally that it seemed that countries with female leaders seem to do better. In fact, Winberg Cox did some research, looked at 194 countries and looked at the first 3 months of the pandemic. And what she found was that those countries with female leaders actually did do better. The infection and fatality rates were lower, and looked at what actually was common to this kind of style of leadership. Firstly, the female leaders included everyone. They didn't just speak to those kind of groups of people, kind of small groups, and kind of, keep other people out. They were very inclusive, very authentic. Jacinda Ardern admitted to being a bit messy when the toddlers were put to bed. So authentic, being seen to be a real person, not standing in front of a podium to deliver your message every day. The important thing was to tell the truth. Angela Merkel, a rational optimist. Some uncomfortable facts, but actually told them honestly. And also, female leaders seemed to be more decisive. They acted early. In Taiwan, they already had a pandemic plan because they had their experience from SARS. So they were able to actually bring out the masks, bring out the kind of track and trace, bring out the arrangements for quarantine very, very early on and benefit from that. Embracing technology was also a good thing and a good common element here. So not just the kind of track and trace app introduced early, not just QR codes, which were used to scan in Taiwan, but also using social media to kind of spread the word and get that out in a kind of consistent way, not leaving the gap to people who are kind of would be kind of debating what is happening, we don't know what's going on. So the rumor mill. And what did this happen? That happened, in the end, it inspired and empowered others to become great leaders. So in terms of actually achieving an equal future, how could we use those kind of experiences? It seems crazy that we had the Equal Pay Act in 1970, but we still have a gender pay gap in this country. And in fact, the World Economic Forum estimated that it's going to take another 200 years to close that gap, which is, to all intents and purposes, illegal. So what is the issue? Women are still being paid less. They're not encouraged to negotiate their pay rises. They have the penalty of motherhood. So how could we do this? How could we feel a bit more optimistic about achieving an equal future? Because it doesn't seem like it's really moved on very far from the 1970s. Although that was a time when if you wanted to start a business, you had to have your husband approve and to actually let you have a bank account on your own. So there have been some improvements. So what could we do? Well, maybe we need more women in politics, and we need more women in politics, not just men in frocks. And we also need the men that are here on the front line with us. Not, it's not only women's job to actually create an equal future, it's men's as well. And we should celebrate those men that are here with us, actually taking some responsibility for childcare and actually taking their fair share of that double shift of the home and the actual work, what we are having to do every day. So hopefully in terms of an equal future, we'll see some development there, that we need to train our sons to go out there and actually take an equal share in the work of the home. And we as women do need to be a little bit more assertive about letting them do that. So hopefully in that case, we can achieve an equal future. Thank you.